Hi there. Today I wanted to show this programming tool that I don't see a lot of YouTubers use, but it's really amazing. I use it just about every day in programming, and it helps you, as a beginner, it really helps you test out things. If you have a syntax error or something that would break your code and cause everything to get messed up, have no fear, Jupyter is there, and you can just keep sort of rerunning things with this coding environment that sort of like has a session. So I'll sort of explain how it works, show you some examples, but it's amazing for data science and again, just sort of trying out new code without having to sort of rerun everything. And you don't even have to just use it in Python. You can use it with other languages. It's even interactive, as you can see in this example here. And it's really cool. I love it. So first off, I'll just show you some quick examples of things you can do with Jupyter. And then I wanted to show you sort of my Intro to Jupyter tutorial for people to follow along and all the tutorials I have available on my GitHub here in the top. Let's begin. Jupyter. So here's an example of a Jupyter notebook. As you can see, this person has mixed in text, and there's actual Python code sort of interlaced with everything. And what's really cool is in here, let's say you're loading a CSV file. Instead of needing to look at it in Excel, boom, you got Jupyter. So you can sort of say, hey, here's the file, I've rendered it, here's what the data looks like. You can see URLs in here. You can see other variables, and if you wanted to plot something based on this, you can still do it without leaving the one programming environment you're in. So this person created a bar chart. This is showing, I believe, let's see here, the Gaza-Israel crisis. So it's showing like events that took place during this crisis, I believe. And so you can do, a bar chart right in here. You could copy this and export it to, a tweet or anything you want to create, an Excel presentation or PowerPoint presentation for work. You could even do it for, sort of sending out a newsletter. You're able to create things with Python and then tweak them without sort of rerunning all your code. This is even in Hebrew, which is kind of, I can't read that. This looks also in Arabic here. But it's kind of cool because say you wanted to be like, these triangles didn't show up just big enough on the screen. Let me just change it. And in Python, you could sort of say, here's the size variable. Now, this is a lot of Python programming you'll eventually learn, but you could just change that variable, see how it looks, don't like it, try another version. Copy and paste, you can export this image just out of the Jupyter Notebook, and boom, you've got your sort of centerpiece that you could talk about in a PowerPoint. So super cool. There's other things you can do. This is a little bit more mathy. So anyone out there who's been experienced with more advanced physics, Calc 3, or just any type of fancy stuff, you can do LaTeX. And there you can write your programming, your mathematical formulas, and you can write Python code, to create a nice big matrix. You can use what's called Markdown. That's the same sort of editor to show things in Jupyter or in GitHub. This Markdown editor is we use a lot in READMEs. And in here, you can also, just like I was saying before, you can create charts. This person's creating charts to do some mathematical function. I'm not even sure what it is, but looks like some linear algebra here, whatever. But boom, he's able to create his sort of model of something. This is x plotted from 0 to 1 and some time domain. I'm not quite sure what this is again, but it's sort of, very cool. Like, let's say if you're a researcher and you want people to be able to follow along with your stuff, or you wanted to validate someone else's research paper, Jupyter Notebook, someone can play around, write with that, and it's amazing. And one last example I'll show is just an interactive one. This is where Jupyter can really, really shine, just because it is not even, you don't even have to be a programmer to use it. So this person created an example of IPy widgets with matplotlib, and this is this editor called Binder, which will sort of render the notebook for you if you don't want to deal with installing Python, although, I really want everyone who watches these videos to deal with installing Python, and I'll do my best to help you because to really program, you need to understand, the basics of installing things because you won't be able to use simple things like Binder or other things that'll handle your coding environment for you in the real world as much. Eventually, you might need to put something in a server if you want to be more useful to yourself and perhaps the company you're working for. So anyways, I just wanted to show a couple quick things with this notebook, and then I'll go through the tutorial I set up for you guys. So boom, I'm just running through cells here. These are individual cells. You can see sort of in 4, this is a coding cell. I could sort of write whatever I want here. A equals 5, A, My variables are set. I can slide the slider, things change. Now where that gets really cool with these interactive widgets is down below. So here we've plotted a sinusoid, and say you're a math teacher trying to teach someone about wave equations. So sine is one example of sort of a wave equation. You can tell them, hey, now let's see what happens when you change. Let's see, what parameter is this? I believe this is omega, like frequency. So as you increase the frequency, the wave gets a lot tighter. And boom, you can see it right there. Amplitude, that's how it changes. Phi, this is like a phase shift. So you can see it sort of sliding away from, where are we here? Gotta have some frequency. So if I slide this to, I think this is in pi, but if I slide it sort of pi away, you can see it just sort of shifted. So now it's going down first and up. But with a math teacher, this could be a great way to show people, formulas. And then you can also do fun coding stuff with it too. You don't just have to do more academic math work. So yeah, I hope you're excited to learn about Jupyter Notebooks. Just about everything I like to do will involve Jupyter Notebooks, so I'd really recommend it. It's kind of like when you see people doing like a shell editor to sort of say, hey, run this Python code and all that, but you get to do more things like make it in a website. So it's a little bit of a better way to show people things, in my opinion. All right, tutorial time. So I want to show you a Jupyter Notebook, and in this one, we'll do one of my favorite things to do in a Jupyter Notebook, which is data scraping. So here I've pulled up the Dogecoin price, very valuable, super useful thing here, Dogecoin. And yeah, so I'm going to sort of show you how Jupyter Notebook works, give you a setup where you can play with it yourself, and we'll show how to parse parse this website so you can get the current Dogecoin price and the current Bitcoin price. So yeah, let's begin. First off, we're going to start over in my big tutorial section. So in here I have a ton of different things, and I'm sort of resurrecting this repo after a few years of having things. But to start off, I would recommend going with this Introduction to Jupyter Notebooks folder. And see here, code done, video coming soon. So video is happening now. Yeah. So, I have install steps here. If you haven't done Python before, click here, follow this README. It should be pretty good. Again, I love helping people get set up with things. I used to do a lot of PC troubleshooting. So, please, if you get stuck here, let me know. I don't want anyone to, just not be able to knock out these steps. It shouldn't take you more than 30 minutes to do. And then you'll be all set, able to run Python, different versions of Python, and trust me, it'll be great. I've got it for Windows and Mac. If you're on some Linux distribution because you're a hipster, by all means, feel free to ask me for help. You can create an issue on this repo. You could reach out in a comment under the YouTube video, or I think I have some links on my blog too that I'll set up that you can contact me and I'll try to help you through it. Anyways, back to the tutorial. I'm going to assume you somewhat know what you're doing with Python. If you don't, again, use that README I pointed you to. So first up, we're going to open our coding shell, and I use this thing called Windows Terminal. It's not available on Mac, it's Windows. It's nice because you can pull up different types of shells, so PowerShell or Command Prompt are more of the Windows way of doing things. I don't really like that, so I use Git Bash mostly, or Ubuntu through the newer Windows subsystem Linux thing, I believe it's called. But we'll just do Git Bash, and that'll be most similar to or the simplest way to get going. So I'm going to do a new shell with Git Bash. You don't have to use Git Terminal. It's just sort of recommended in my install steps. You could also pull up Git Bash this way, same exact thing. Terminal just sort of controls multiple terminals in this nice tab view for you, so that's why I like to use it. All right, so I'm just going to pull up the tutorial, and then we're going to open up a Jupyter Notebook so I can walk you through everything. So CD, change directory. We're going to find where we're supposed to go here. I believe I am in projects. Let's see here. All right, here's all my goodies here. Where am I? Oh, Pythos. That's what I call things. So I'm going into my tutorials folder. This is where you'll clone this repo, this Roger Fitz tutorials repo. So that's what tutorials is pointing to here. In here we can see all these different things, some things that I haven't published yet that are sort of planned. But we're gonna, for every tutorial, we're gonna go into the individual repo. I just did cd space underscore, and then tab will auto-complete things for you. Really handy on the show to use tab. So we're in there. You can see this sort of base thing at the top. That means our Python environment is set to the Conda base sort of Python version. So Conda is what I'm using to manage Python. It's what I would recommend. You can do your own thing, but Conda is pretty nice for handling all the ugly C binaries that sort of become a pain with programming. So I'm just going to activate the Jupyter Notebook environment. Although if you're starting this yourself, you should follow this command to create the new environment. I called it Jupyter Notebooks, and then I told the code or the program what libraries to install and what exact versions. And what that does is, say 10 years from now, someone wants to work on this tutorial. Python could be on Python 11 by then. You'll still be able to run it because you're using Python sort of at a certain point in time, so the time of 3.9 version. So again, that's why it's helpful to use different Python environments. They're called. Conda activate Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, so we're in, and then open our Jupyter Notebooks, just type Jupyter Notebook. And that'll create this sort of different way of accessing your Jupyter Notebook server. So what's happening here is your computer is hosting a web server with Jupyter running on it, and you can run Python with this exact Jupyter Notebooks environment on it. And if you click here, that'll take you to your own personal website. You could also put this on a server, but I won't really get into all that or certain caveats if you wanted to put it on a server for security reasons. Not security reasons of me showing you, but there's some things you should consider if you're going to deploy it on a server. Anyways, and then here we go, Jupyter Notebooks Basics. So I just opened the notebook. You'll see it's an IPYNB file. These other ones are just different text files. You can still open them with Jupyter, but they don't show up as pretty if you're just as if you were just to open it yourself. Back on target here. So here's my Jupyter Notebook tutorial on Jupyter Notebooks. In here I put in Markdown code. I won't really go through all this because I've kind of glossed over it, but if you're reading this or if you prefer reading versus listening to someone in a video, read through it. It sort of tells you what's happening here, but you'll notice at the top there are these cells. So this is what's called a cell in Jupyter Notebook. If I write something here, like 5, this tells Python, hey, run 5. If I were to do this in my shell, it's pretty much the same as, let me go here. This will work, Python I, so this is an interactive shell. I just type 5, same thing. So it's sort of running this Python session, but also with the benefits of being on a website, so you can render things a lot prettier. Back to the notebook. If I define something, like a equals 5 here, and then later I want to do b equals 1, b equals 1.5, a times b, it still knows about a. So just like a coding shell, like this sort of terminal view I have pulled up here, same deal, except, again, you get a website, so it's kind of cool. And then you get these shortcuts. So right now, I just press the escape key on my keyboard. And if I press X, that'll do sort of like a cut. So I can sort of say, cut the cell, paste it up here, if I'm reordering things. And there's a lot of other cool shortcuts. I won't really get into all of them on the video, but I put a note of the ones I use in this notebook. And then what else to show you real quick here? So yeah, these are also cells, these sort of textual things that don't look like code. And this is called Markdown. So you can sort of select what you want to have here. You can say Markdown. You can even use a shortcut to turn from Markdown to code. So that's what the Markdown looks like. I press the shortcut to change this to code. And if I change it back to Markdown, it looks kind of like this. Shift Enter will run the cell and sort of say, okay, take my Markdown and render it. Or take my code and run it. Same concept. Shift Enter is the one I'd recommend. It's the same as this run cell command here. Press run, keep going through this. Again, slow down, pause the video, or pull the notebook up yourself. You can see all these shortcuts. These are the core ones I use. There's a typo I need to fix. Escape. But I use these shortcuts just about every day. I use Jupyter. There's a ton though, and I'd recommend looking at this person's cheat sheet if you wanted to learn more shortcuts. So here we go. Here's a shortcut. Practice a shortcut now spot. When you pull this repo, I'd recommend you practice a shortcut. So to delete this without using the mouse, you can either do dd, which is the same command as vi, or x. So I just deleted that. So I'm going to put it back. Delete me. And then escape x. I'm in there, so there's different shortcuts you can use. I'd recommend you just practice a few. You can do that when you're learning. Especially these shortcuts I've listed here. They're very, very helpful. Also, I'll just call out pressing escape takes you into command mode, where you can sort of use your keyboard to go up and down, just like the coding editor VI. You can sort of escape out of that by pressing the enter key, and then you're in an individual cell where you can type. All right. So here we go. For whatever reason, I kept landing on a equals 5. I sort of showed you this earlier. B wasn't defined when I first created this, but I defined it way at the top, even though I deleted that cell. So B is still defined. But if I were to type the variable C, that would say not defined. And again here, A is still defined later on, even though we had an error that would have broken your own Python code. Doesn't matter, the session is still preserved. So that's why Jupyter is real nice, because when you're data scraping, you're doing certain things in data science, you don't want to rerun your whole model, rerun all your data pools, just because you converted a float wrong or something. You want to be able to stop and sort of do that tweak without restarting the whole process. And yeah, so let's keep going. So now for the more fun part, we're going to do the coin market cap data scrape example. So here I took a screenshot of the website. If you invested into Dogecoin like 2 weeks ago when I created this notebook, compared to now, you'd be doing great. Not that I would necessarily recommend Doge as an investment, but just cleaning up some things here. Here's Dogecoin now, so 24 cents. So quite the change. And let's go down here. So there's a few libraries that I also had you install sort of in the setup steps. This is called the request library. So this lets you sort of say, hey, go to this URL and extract the data. And don't worry about response codes and all that. This is sort of more theory stuff you don't really need to know, but anything starting with a 2 is a good thing. So I just sort of showed that, hey, I got the URL. It said I got a 200, which is good. So we're all set. And now, I've gotten the URL, and now I'm looking at the text of it. So I want to see, was I able to sort of extract the URL? How did that go? Oh, gotta rerun this. Okay, so here we go. I've sort of run the URL. I'm looking at it, so I see all this gibberish. This is JavaScript and HTML all bundled together. It's kind of ugly, but that's why we have this BS4 library. It's called Beautiful Soup, and it takes this sort of alphabet soup and turns it into a little bit of a nicer thing to look at. Just a sec here. Okay. Yes. Okay. So now we've got HTML. It's a little better. You can see things are entered a bit better. It's still not great. And imagine trying to write data scraping code on this if you were, what's it called? Doing it the more old-fashioned way of, running a Python file or something. It'd be kind of a pain to sort of print this out and stare at it. So what we're going to do is first verify that we can sort of find the data in the HTML. That's a quick shortcut. If the string exists, then the HTML was downloaded successfully. Then we can sort of look up sort of around it and figure out where we want to extract the data. So what I like to do is just type the price. Boom, there. We found the price in one spot here. And you can sort of see this as like a squirrely bracket. Again, don't expect to just know how to do all this data scraping stuff. I've done this for a while. But what I'd recommend is instead of pulling that data, just to pull it from the HTML itself. So we're going to keep searching through. This is JavaScript. We're just going to keep going through. Okay, we found the price value that's displayed on the website, and it's labeled price value. How convenient. So now we just need to tell Beautiful Soup, hey, go find me the value and price value. And another way to see this, if you haven't seen that before, some people are just completely amazed when I show it, is inspect element. So I'm going to go to this website here, and you'll notice the price is different. I saved the file with the HTML that existed when I was creating the tutorial, so everyone would be able to follow along, even if the website changed. Anyways, right-click, go to Inspect, and now we can see the HTML and have highlighters. So boom, we can see a much prettier view. Maybe it's even better to start with Inspect Element instead of Jupyter for seeing things here. And you can clearly see price value. That's a good sort of ID to find the price on this page. Classes aren't always the best to use. IDs are preferred, but we'll just do a quick search and see if price value is unique. Because if we have a unique sort of key on a website, then we can grab everything very, very easily. Okay, so here we go. Just good old Control F, kind of ugly. Or actually, I guess this is a better way to do it. So we'll just tell Beautiful Soup to look for all divs. That's like a division in code. I took a screenshot here with the class price value. And boom, we can see there's only one. Great news for us, since we don't have to sort of figure out which one is the right one. So it just sort of is based on the URL at the top here. Currencies, Dogecoin, find the price value. That's the price. Okay, so here's code to extract the price. So we sort of grab the first element in the list, get the text, and then we can convert that text to a float using this code here. Boom, we got the price. You'll notice what's it called? You can sort of see how this price that text, if I were to rerun it, it wouldn't work. And that's kind of a quirk with Jupyter. Because everything is sort of sequential and dependent on what was run before it, you can get into weird spots where a piece of code isn't rerunnable. So when I do Jupyter, I try to use different variable names so that every component or every cell is rerunnable. It really helps avoid silly attribute errors and sharing your notebook and say, run this before this, after this, and make it a whole mess to follow, because Jupyters are quite unwieldy at times. They're sort of like lab experiments, if you will. So cool. Now we've got the price from a website. We found that, at the time I ran this, the price of, what's the word? The price of Dogecoin was 19 cents and 62 fractions of a cent. Yeah. So now, when you're doing a Jupyter notebook, it's nice to be able to just, test things out, but eventually you have to make it usable. Sometimes you just sort of output like a CSV file or an Excel file. That can be your completed notebook. But if you're trying to create code that you can reuse, that's sort of more of my goal here. It's good to create things with functions. So here I wanted to create something, say we wanted to sort of have a cryptocurrency scraping bot. It would be nice to be able to sort of say, hey, given this URL, tell me what the price of the crypto is. And then you can abstract that in different ways, like I'm showing how you could get Bitcoin and Dogecoin's price. So if you had a list of all the currencies on CoinMarketCap, all these sort of URLs, then you could easily write or abstract away sort of extracting the different prices for those crypto coins. So here's just a for loop. I've sort of abstracted a little bit. Base URL, currency. Let's just try Bitcoin and Dogecoin. No, value error. Okay, so here's a great reason why you use Jupyter. So Dogecoin didn't have a comma, and now that I'm trying to convert this, there's a comma in it, and it's not letting me convert the variable to a float. There's other functions you could use in Python, but I like being a little bit more sort of explicit, like sort of showing you everything that's happening when I'm coding. So we'll just sort of do it this more pretty, replace the $sign to make something a float, and replace the comma to make it sort of floatable in Python. So we'll do that quick fix down below. You can see Bitcoin just too valuable these days. And mute. And now I just did a quick change here, just change that one little component, replace the comma with an empty char. So now we got the price for both Bitcoin and Dogecoin. That's pretty good, so we know our function kind of works. there's different spots, in the art of programming where you can sort of decide how you want to abstract and use different things, like maybe a standard text to float function could be useful, so you don't have to copy and paste this back in if you improve it at a later point. But anyways, back on track here. I wanted to show how you could sort of take the data and now output a CSV. So here I have a quick for loop, same sort of thing as before, except now I'm creating everything in a dictionary. And a dictionary is nice because I can say this column corresponds to this. Hey, that price 54139, that is actually the Bitcoin price. And again, if you invested 2 weeks ago, that would have been great. Anyways, rows, here we go. Bitcoin is now 54,139. And we can use this pandas library, similar to that Gaza Israel example I showed you. The pandas library will sort of show you the table in a pretty fashion, so you don't have to dump it into Excel or something else to look at it. So boom, current price. We can see Bitcoin and that. And do some basic stats on it. What's the mean price? Kind of nonsense, but if you wanted to see the minimum price of a crypto or the max price, that's kind of cool. I won't really go much into pandas here, but in a later tutorial, I'll definitely show you some pandas stuff. That's cool. And also, if we wanted to use this data and maybe output it to a CSV, maybe create a script that runs every 30 minutes, gets the current price and the current time, you want to add the time to it. So here's how you can do that in pandas. Just say set this column to the current time. Boom, you got that. And then you could even output it as a CSV. Prices. And, I always turn the index off to go into that, but there you go. So we even created an output file that you could do for a ton of cryptos, and you can see this is the CSV. So yeah, thank you for watching. Very basic primer to Jupyter Notebooks. I'd want to encourage you to maybe try your own scraping problem, or if you're more mathematically inclined, want to go into the widgets and try to do that yourself. If you really want me to cover something, by all means, try to reach out, leave a comment, whatever way seems good to reach out to me. Please do. Happy to work on things you all find interesting. I want to create good Python tutorials for everyone who's learning, and yeah, just help people learn how to code. So thank you. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.